Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into one of life's biggest mysteries, attraction. Why do we want who we want? It turns out the answer has a lot less to do with your conscious choices than you probably think. We all like to think we're in the driver's seat when it comes to love. You've got your type, your list of must-haves, right? But as neuroscientist Dr. Sarah Hill puts it, so much of attraction is happening way below the surface, guided by these ancient biological scripts that were written long, long before you ever had your first crush.
And this is where we hit a really fascinating contradiction. On one hand, it feels so personal. We all have our own unique thing that just gets our attention. But on the other hand, science shows there are these huge, predictable patterns at play for pretty much all of us. So here's the big takeaway. Your unique taste in partners, that's absolutely real. But running silently in the background, kind of like an operating system for desire, are these universal patterns. And they're driven by evolutionary forces that we rarely, if ever, stop to think about. Okay, so let's get right into the first major piece of this puzzle, what we're calling the evolutionary divide. We're going to explore how millions of years of evolution have shaped what men and women look for in some really different and often competing ways. So why is that? Why the split? Well, the answer goes way back. It's all about the different evolutionary challenges that our male and female ancestors had to solve. For thousands and thousands of years, the name of the game was passing on your genes, but the strategies for men and women, they just weren't the same. And what's really wild here is how this frames our modern preferences not as, just social trends, but as ancient survival strategies. For men, the goal was pretty straightforward: maximize the chance of passing on genes. For women, it was a longer game: ensure the survival and well-being of their children. This is such a great way to illustrate that female preference in action. Signs of maturity, like an older George Clooney, get subconsciously translated by the brain into really attractive qualities, like stability, wisdom, and, the resources needed to raise a family successfully. Now, for men, the evolutionary math was totally different. To maximize the chances of reproduction, the male brain got wired to find cues of peak fertility the most attractive. This is where we see things that have been celebrated in art and culture for centuries, like the hourglass figure, which is really just a biological signal of healthy estrogen levels and other youthful features. Okay, but here's where it all comes together. These different preferences, they don't just exist in a bubble. They slam into each other in the real world, creating this dynamic and, let's be honest, often fierce mating market where people are competing for the partners they want. So let's talk about that competition. Let's see how this whole thing builds into real-world behaviors that are playing out all around us, especially in places where things are a little unbalanced. College campuses are like a perfect laboratory for this stuff. Right now, you've got way more women than men in college. So what happens? The dating market gets completely skewed. Women end up competing way more intensely for a smaller group of guys. And the whole dating culture starts to shift toward what the men in that market want, which very often is more casual, short-term relationships, hookup culture. And because men, guided by that ancient evolutionary script, place such a heavy emphasis on physical appearance, well, guess what becomes the main battlefield for female competition? In this competition, it isn't always about just trying to look your best. Oh no, it can get way more direct. As the research points out, a really common tactic is derogating competitors. Basically, using social tools like gossip or insults to try and tank a rival's value in the eyes of other people. So when you hear those little comments like, oh, she's had work done, or, her personality isn't that great, these aren't just random little digs. According to researchers, these are often very strategic moves in a really high-stakes game, all designed to make a competitor seem less appealing. All right, this brings us to a really tough and maybe even uncomfortable truth about the incredible power that attractiveness has in our society, a power that goes way, way beyond just dating. So let me just ask you this question. What do you think is the single biggest factor that helps a woman move up from the social class she was born into? Is it her intelligence, her education, how hard she works? The answer is, honestly, it's pretty stunning. According to the data, a woman's physical attractiveness is a more powerful predictor of her moving up the social ladder than her education or even the family she was born into. Just look at this chart. It's not even close. And just so we're all crystal clear, when we say upward social mobility, we're talking about the ability to go from, say, a working class background to a middle or even upper class life. And attractiveness, it turns out, is the most powerful lever for that. And yeah, that is a tough pill to swallow. It kind of challenges everything we like to believe about meritocracy and hard work paying off, doesn't it? It suggests that these ancient biological currencies, they still hold a tremendous amount of power. So after all this, what are we supposed to do with this information? Well, understanding these deep, primal drivers of attraction doesn't mean we're just puppets on a string. Awareness is always the first step.
So, the really big takeaway here is that these ancient scripts are still running in the background of our super modern lives. They influence everything from who we swipe right on to the power dynamics at work, and even, as we've seen, our actual chances of moving up in the world. So, I'll leave you with this. Now that you know a little bit about this unconscious code, how does it change the way you see attraction? By understanding the blueprint, we can at least be more aware of why we feel what we feel and see the invisible forces that are shaping our world. It doesn't give us all the answers, but man, it sure makes us ask better questions.